All right, you guys, let's continue with some more examples dealing with rational exponents. All right, so let's look at this first one. So it tells us to evaluate, and A says 27 to the negative 1/3 power. So we already looked at our previous example. Anytime that you have a negative exponent, you can make it positive by moving the entire expression down into the denominator. So I'm going to do that first. All right, so that when I move my expression down to the denominator, it made my power positive. Now I'm going to convert that into a radical, okay? So remember, bottom out, top in. So I'm gonna have 1 over, I'm gonna write my radical symbol. 27 goes underneath. The denominator becomes the index, and the power becomes the power underneath, okay? So then I'm gonna have 1 over the cube root of 27. The cube root of 27 is 1 over 3. Okay. All right, let's look at the B. All right, so same thing. We have a negative exponent again. So the first thing I'm going to do is make it positive. So that's 1 over negative 8 to the 1/3 power. Okay. Notice that when I do that, okay, the changing the exponent to positive did not have any effect on this number that was in the parentheses. Okay. Just because you move it to the denominator does not mean that that's also going to be positive. It's still going to remain negative. Okay. Now I can convert this to a radical expression. So I'm going to have 1 over the cube root of negative 8. Okay. So before we had a problem where we had to do the square root of a negative number, and we couldn't do that. It's going to be not a real number. But if you have the cube root of a negative number, that's completely fine. So the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. So I'm going to have 1 over negative 2. And those are my two answers. So let's check to see if we're right. 1/3 and negative 1/2. Good. All right. Now let's look at some ones where we've changed the numerator. Okay. So it says to evaluate. So same thing. All right. So I'm going to rewrite this as a radical expression. So I'm going to write the radical. 64 goes underneath. The denominator becomes the index, which is cubed. And the power, the numerator, becomes the exponent underneath, okay? So I have to do the cube root of 64 squared, okay? So one cool thing about exponents and indexes, all right, is that if you're following the order of operations, the order in which you do those does not matter, okay? So if you wanted to, you could square 64 and then take the cube root of it in your calculator. That's completely fine. But for me, sometimes I like to do these in my head, and I can do roots faster than I can do exponents. So what I mean by when you can change the order, instead of squaring the 64 and then cubing it, you could do this. You could take the cube root of 64, and then you can square it, okay? So for me, I know what the cube root of 64 is. It's 4. And then I could square that, and that's 16. So I could do that a lot faster than plug it into my calculator, but if you wanted to, it's completely okay. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just sometimes it's easier if you reverse the order of those operations, okay? So it's up to you. You have your calculator for the most part, so if you wanted to use it, that's completely fine. So if you wanted to do 64 squared is the same thing as 4,096. And then if you wanted to take the cube root of that, that would also give you 16. Okay. So either way you do it, you're going to get the same answer. All right. All right. Let's look at the second one. So the second one has us do 27 over 125 to the 2/3 power. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is write my expression underneath the radical. So that's 27 over 125. The denominator becomes the index. The numerator becomes the exponent underneath, okay? So you can do the cube root of 27 over 125 squared, okay? So I'm going to show you guys again how I do the order reversed, okay? So if I wanted to do this one, I would do the cube root of 27 over 125, and then I would square whatever answer I got. So the cube root of 27 over 125, remember it's the same thing as taking the cube root of those individually. So the cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of 125 is 5. And then I would square both of those. So 3 squared is 9, and 5 squared is 25. Okay, so either way, 9 over 25 is my answer. Cool. All right, let's see if we're right. So 16 and 9 over 25. We're on a roll. All right, let's see if we can do these. So if you want to, pause the video to see if you can do these on your own, okay? Or you continue to watch and see me do it. All right, so the same thing, we have a rational exponent. I'm gonna change it to a radical expression. So the first thing I'm gonna do is draw my radical sign, 49. The denominator becomes the index. The power on the top becomes the exponent underneath. Okay, so this is telling me to do the square root of 49 to the third power. Okay, I'm going to do it out of order again because I like to try to do things as most as I can without a calculator. Mental math is very good for you. All right, so I'm going to do the square root of 49, and then I'm going to raise that to the third power. So the square root of 49 is 7, and then 7 to the third power, that's 343. Okay. All right, let's look at b. So b is negative 8 to the 4 of a third power. So same deal. Gonna write my radical sign. Negative 8 is gonna go underneath. The denominator is gonna become the index, and the numerator is gonna become the power inside. So this is telling me to do the cube root of negative 8 to the 4th power. I'm gonna do them reversed again. So I'm gonna have the cube root of negative 8, and then I'm going to raise that to the 4th power. The cube root of negative 8, that's negative 2. And negative 2 to the 4th power, that's 16. Okay, so you had a negative number raised to an even power. Okay, so that's going to be a positive answer. Because what this is saying, you're saying negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is positive. Negative times negative is positive, and a positive times a positive is positive. So don't forget that. Anytime you have a negative number raised to an even power, your answer is always going to be positive. Cool. Let's see if we're right. So 343 and 16. Awesome.